I'm looking forward to your manuscript in the sense of the idea for me that humans control the earth is analogous to the idea that the United States controls Iraq, which on one level, on another level it can never be true, and we are militarily more powerful than non-humans, but we are not. They're not under our control, except for the billions whom we farm and vivisect, etc. But in terms of the billion animal species and the countless billions of animals out there, I don't know that I would agree that we control them or that we ever could. And that leads to the idea of well, what can one, if we can't control animals, and again, that would be my position. I don't think we can, and I'm not talking about now philosophically, I'm talking about practically. We can't control animals. What can we do with them? And that leads to a larger sort of side discussion of, well, one of the reasons we can't control animals is because we are animals, and that's that's the problem, I think, with the term animal. And I think Steve was alluding to this. The idea of animal as an umbrella term to encompass the incredible diversity of life actually is a kind of violence to the diversity of life, because to call a crocodile and a June bug and a gorilla and a whale and all the other billion types of animals and to lump them into the same category doesn't really have any referential value, and yet it allows the law to treat them as one thing, which really doesn't have any practical value. And this is the same problem really with personhood as a category, and I think we're going to get to that fairly soon. Personhood, even giving animals personhood, can't possibly express the needs and norms of a truly and multicultural world, and I use culture now to encompass non-human animals as well as humans. So the incredible diversity and the normative diversity that is necessary to articulate a world where we don't have just this binary between animals and humans is I think, I return to my earlier point, which is that we have the vocabulary of the law simply isn't adequate at present to express it, and so when we make laws that don't acknowledge this, the laws themselves are philosophically self-undermining. They can't answer the why question. Why do we have this law? Why? Why should we do this? If there's a distinction between the practical versus the philosophical basis for the law, then even if it may be practical and the law still can't answer the why question, the law gets riven with the kind of exceptions that totally reduce the law to insignificance, which is what the problem with anti-cruelty laws. Anti-cruelty laws exclude virtually all animals from their ambit. So yes, as a philosophical matter, we accept that non-human animals should not be treated cruelly, but the law is so riven with exceptions that the exception swallows the rule, and the law itself has no practical value. And that's I think what we're butting our heads against as an academy and as a society of laws. We don't know how to say what we want, partly because we don't know what we want, but also because we just don't know how to say it.
I wanted to follow up with Steve's approach. He described the approach of standing for chimpanzees, and I wanted to indicate that to some extent this is reality right now. There's litigation, the issue of standing for 9 primates held by primarily primates in Texas. The issue of standing for those primates as plaintiffs is fully briefed and on appeal in Texas. And the underlying facts are that Ohio State University was using these primates. There are 7 chimpanzees and 2 capuchin monkeys who were used for cognition research. And so these are animals, these are primates who were used to develop their capacities to communicate with us, to communicate with each other. And the funding ran out for the research, and so they were rather useless to OSU at that point. They were property that required expensive maintenance, right? But there was no funds for continuing the research. So OSU entered into a contract with primarily primates so that the primarily primates would be responsible for lifetime care of these primates. And OSU transferred the primates in $236,000 to PPI to provide that lifetime care. The petition for this lawsuit alleges really heartrending facts. One of the chimpanzees was a 25-year-old male named Kermit. And Kermit had already, by the time he reached the facility in Texas from Ohio, he had already spent 60 consecutive hours in a transport cage so small relative to his body size that he was forced to remain in a seated position, in the same seated position for the entire 60 hours, even needing to go to the bathroom, even needing to drink. No matter what, for 60 hours, he was confined. PPI had not made arrangements for the immediate transfer of these animals, according to the petition. This is all according to the petition. Had not made arrangements for the immediate transfer of the animals to temporary quarters when they arrived. So he remained seated in that transport cage for another 20 hours before a veterinarian came, and Kermit was agitated. So he received not one, but 3 injections of ketamine. Ketamine is a chemical restraint and dissociative drug. And so the animal was dissociating, but could not, and paralyzed, so he could not control his movements. The petition alleges that while in that state and unattended, his head dropped against the cage door, limiting or entirely cutting off his air supply, and he died because he could not lift his head. For the preceding 23 years at OSU, Kermit had shared the same sleeping area with another chimpanzee named Daryl, another chimpanzee who'd been trained to be very communicative and interactive. Kermit and Daryl were supposed to be housed together at PPI, but of course now Kermit's dead. So Daryl was transferred to a partially constructed, windowless cinder block room where he remains, according to the petition. I think that through other developments in the case, he may not now be in that cinder block windowless room, but a large number of chimpanzees are. Daryl, according to the petition, was not given access to the outdoors and was alone in a strange and frightening world that he could not possibly understand. And as Steve has pointed out, these are remarkable animals who can understand and can be scared and do have needs of sociability that are totally frustrated. About 6 weeks after arrival at PPI, 2 more chimpanzees died. One, a 16-year-old male named Bobby, was found dead in his cage. In the week prior to his death, he'd lost weight and refused to leave his sleeping area for an entire week. No veterinarian was called, according to the petition. The other, a female named Lynn, died after exhibiting clearly observable symptoms of a serious health problem. Her body was partially paralyzed and she had to drag herself into her sleeping area where she later died. Her body remained inside the sleeping area, a dead companion to the other chimpanzees. It remained there for 2 days after her death because PPI staff, according to the petition, was unable to lock down the cage and safely segregate the dead body from the other chimpanzees in the enclosure. Chimpanzees who relate to each other as beings with meaning, and here's a dead one among us lying there decomposing for 2 days in Texas.